Good evening, everyone. My name is Shaylin Woods, and I am the head and archivist of the Ernest J. Gaines Center, which is located on the third floor of the Edith Garland Dupree Library at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. And I want to thank you all for attending tonight's book talk with Nathan Harris. Nathan Harris is this year's winner of the Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence. The Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence honors Dr. Gaines's memory and serves as inspiration and recognizes rising African-American fiction writers for excellence at a national level. This award was initiated by donors of the Baton Rouge Area Foundation and is now in its 15th year iteration and has become nationally recognized for its role in enhancing the visibility of emerging African-American fiction writers while also expanding the audience for this literature. Nathan Harris holds an MFA from the Michener Center at the University of Texas and an English degree from the University of Oregon. His debut novel, The Sweetness of Water, was published by Little Brown in 2021 and was on the Oprah's Book Club list this summer, as well as on the list of summer readings for President Barack Obama. In addition to winning the Ernest J. Gaines Award for Literary Excellence, this book has also been longlisted for the Man Booker Prize, the Center for Fiction First Novel Prize, and the Carnegie Medal of Excellence in Fiction. He was honored as one of 5 under 35 by the National Book Foundation, and he currently lives in Seattle, Washington. Thank you guys again for attending, and I am turning it over to Nathan Harris. Thank you.
Hey guys, I'm happy to be here. Yeah, this is a great honor. Shaylin, are you moderating? I don't have a speech prepared or anything.
Oh, we just want to hear about your amazing book, and you can talk about the award, and if you would like, read a section from your book, possibly.
I don't even have the novel with me right now. I mean, I thought we were gonna have a back and forth that you had some questions for me.
We can do that too. I'm always good at coming up with questions, trust.
Well, you said a book talk, so I thought it was just gonna be a discussion. I don't have anything ready. I mean, it's a great honor. I mean, it's been quite the journey. You know, I started the book at the University of Oregon, so that was 4 or 5 years ago. You know, I've always loved historical fiction. You know, especially books about the Civil War, you know, whether it be The Known World or going even back to Gone with the Wind. You know, it's you know, these days politically charged book, but just I love getting swept up in those sort of stories, and I just wanted to offer my own take on it. So yeah, I wrote The Sweetness of Water, and here we are. So it's been quite the journey, and it's been very surreal to go through it all. So yeah.
Well, Dr. Gaines, his work is absolutely historical fiction, and he started writing his novels with the very explicit intent to redefine and illustrate the way African Americans were being portrayed in Southern fiction. So when we're thinking about, you know, historical fiction, it's something that plays it plays so many different roles in like the way we learn how to think about our position currently and what's happening to us now, what's happening in our world now, but also thinking about like how the world has evolved around us and within our spaces. So would you mind telling us a little bit more about The Sweetness of Water? Really, like maybe the historical time period you were excited about that drove that novel?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't think the novel could be set anywhere else, you know, or any other time period. And I think a lot of what people are connecting with the novel in a way is that it overlays itself onto the present time so well, what we're going through. I think we're going through a period of a lot of upheaval and a lot of disruption with, you know, class differences and race differences, and a level of tribalism that we haven't seen in a long time. So I think I wanted to touch on all of that, and I think setting it in in the past, right after the Civil War, gives readers an opportunity to engage with those questions at a remove almost. And I didn't want anything to be too heavy-handed. So I don't know, it's the story always comes first for me, but I think all of those themes that I was talking about are there under the surface. And I just wanted to bring them up and provoke them in readers and give people a chance to just to think about those things. So yeah, that's what I attempted to do there.
So the Reconstruction era, which is the time period right after the Civil War, from 18, I'm gonna be a little bit off on the history. Give me a second.
I would be too.
roughly 1870 to like 1885, 86. That was a very transitional time period in American history, not just in the American South, but in American history in overall, because nobody really knew what to do with what was then termed the Negro question, right? We had a social caste system that existed that kind of led us heavy-handedly forward about and told the nation like who we were and how we were to operate. That's just completely been like turned on its ear. Even in thinking about like the politicians of that day, like in the South, Louisiana actually had quite a few Black Reconstruction era politicians. They didn't hold office long because the Reconstruction era did not last long. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of conversation right now about the law that was passed that actually ended the Reconstruction era and its implications today. The law that was passed that made sure the Republican Party of the time kept the White House after the Civil War, after the full election after Abraham Lincoln had been assassinated. So this is an era, this is a time period that we are still directly being affected by, even if we don't think about it. I think one of the most interesting things to me that I just learned, like one of the biggest things, American folklore really started getting its legs at this same time period, looking at how, looking at like the disappearing plantation space and how do we document that? And so a lot of things that we think about when we're thinking about like Negro spirituals and our understanding and even the literal documentation, the early photographs that came out of quarter communities at this time period were all taken, with this big push towards folklore to document these things. And there are so many other authors who are writing about writing for representation at literally at the turn of the century. You had Dunbar, you had Chestnut, and all these things are kind of happening together. So like a new and more modern novel kind of also asking those same questions that were being asked in the 1800s is something really interesting and maybe a little jarring that we're still having these conversations that they were having at the turn of the 20th century. We're still dealing with these kind of issues.
Yeah. I'll take a sort of a different angle from that. I think part of the reason that this time period was curious to me wasn't. It's hard as a novelist to tackle that wide range of time you're talking about, but for me, that small pocket immediately after the slaves were free, that was, as a novelist, what really caught my attention and made me think, what must that have been like? Because you did have this period where Blacks were entering office and they had some power and that would soon be taken away from them. And there's freedom, but with that freedom comes this great threat of what will happen next or what could happen. And every step is a dangerous one, but the only other option is to stay on the plantation. So I wanted to occupy that space psychologically, if you will, in the characters of Prentice and Landry, and sort of ask myself, what I would do and what I thought, these characters would do. So it's a very fascinating time period, and I just wanted to dip into that as an author.
It's a time period. Oh, we have a question.
Sure.
Shelley? You're muted, Shelley.
I made a joke like a few weeks ago about being muted, and all I've done is be muted every time I've tried to talk since then. It's very nice to meet you. Thanks for talking with us tonight. I love the book. And I was in a panel yesterday that was talking about race and rurality. It's very hard for me to say. The panel chair had no problem saying rurality, so I was very impressed with that. And when we talk about space and like the Southern Lit classes that I teach, we always think about space as contested, as space is never static, right? And so I was thinking about that with your book. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you, or if you see these kind of rural spaces as contested, particularly as it, and I'm thinking about just Prentice and Landry, as they're walking, like how they move about the space at this time.
When you mean contested, I'm not familiar with that.
So for example, we in Jasmine Ward's Sing Unburied Sing, right? There's this scene where the white friend is looking at a courthouse and she says, "Oh, this is the most beautiful courthouse in the state of Mississippi." Whereas Leonie, who's the protagonist, one of the protagonists, is thinking, it might be beautiful for you, but this space does not mean what it doesn't mean to you, it doesn't mean to me what it means to you, right? So this space doesn't have a single definition of what it means to either the land or the people who occupy it, right? So space is always contested along these kind of axes of difference. And
I see where you're coming from. No, that's fascinating. And this is the sort of thing where I didn't think about it when I was writing it particularly, but I love having these conversations with readers because I get to think about my work in a whole new way. In the book, people who haven't read it, the character Landry is really taken by a pond, and some other characters are there, and it leads to a lot of tension. And but I mean, you could say that about so many areas of the book, the plantation, whatever it may be. Yeah, I think that's impossible to get away from. And again, as a storyteller, so much of the tension is born from what character has power, and so much of the power is drawn from the land, and who's owned the land, and whose families have had that power for going back for such a long period of time. So that's not something I've thought about directly, but it's behind everything, and especially in the South. And I think that's one of the big reasons why, again, I said it in the South during this time period, because you can emphasize that in almost every single interaction and draw so much from it. So thank you for bringing that to my attention.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, contested spaces. I like
that. You're muted.
Kelly, I think you're taking over the Zoom now. It's all on you.
Yeah. Gotta love Zoom. Go ahead, Mr. Burrell.
I'll chime in. I'm Ralph Burrell, and Nathan, I'm from Medford, Oregon.
Oh my God, Ralph.
So good to see that
hometown.
a person with Southern Oregon roots does so well. I'm also an English major from a different Pac-12 school and a different era. But I wanted to say, a couple of things. First of all, I thought your novel was the best fiction I read all year last year. Wow. So congratulations on that. We have a men's book club in Southern Oregon that I'm a part of, and this month we're reading your novel. I'd already read it, but the others hadn't. And so I'll be interested in the discussion we have next week. I had a question for you about August.
Okay, sure.
If I had a disappointment in the book, it seemed like August got away with it. I mean, you kind of lost track of him until the very end. And I wondered, was that intentional on your part? or, I mean, because the other characters, there's so much depth to them. And I love the progression, especially George and Isabel. That was so well done. So congratulations on that, as well as many other things about the book. But again, August, the way the book ended, maybe it's my morality without him really being accountable in his own right. I don't know. Again, is that pretty much what you had intended, or did it just sort of end that way?
No. I mean, again, great question. I mean, it was intentional.
Okay.
I think what I want to do, I think a lot of loose ends were tied up, but for me, in a way, August, needs to represent the side of history that is very real, that these individuals from a place of privilege, they get away with things, and they're allowed to. And, writing it, you have that moment where, with all my characters, you start writing a novel, and parts of the characters you love, you want everything to go right for them, and for some of those characters, bad things have to happen, because that's just how it goes. And I think on a level of storytelling and on a level of politics and giving justice to the time period, I really did feel like August, in a way, was symbolic of the fact that things don't always end up being the right people, don't always win.
Good point.
Yeah, villainous guy, and he sort of I'm sure he continued on that path. I haven't thought about August in a while, but I'm sure he was allowed to just be that person, and that back then he was allowed to do that. So yeah,
White privilege,
if you will. Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and thank you for choosing the book for your book club. I'm glad you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I did.
Let's see, what's this? What do I click this? Here we go. Nathan, you're originally from Oregon. Where'd you get the idea to base the book in the South? And what additional research sources did you use to capture various culture references, etc.? Thank you, Monique. Let me just read that through again. I touched on it a bit. I mean, I felt like it had to be based in the South. I mean, the story to me originally, again, was born by reading some of the oral histories of freed slaves and those narratives that were put down to paper by historians. And just again, that those first moments, I remember, I don't know where it came from, it was on the internet, but I was reading about the moment the gate opened to the, from the plantation, and they were saying you're free. And I was just thinking, and what would that be like? So there was no way to make a story about these characters anywhere else other than the South. But not being from the South certainly made me hesitate, and I think that's why I set it in a fictional town, Old Ox. I think Old Ox and it not being real gave me the flexibility to just tell myself, okay, you don't have to get, the streets correct, or you don't, you've never been there, it's not real. So you have this ability to just sort of take a step back and, write the story as it comes to you. But again, I want to do justice to the South. So I just tried to read as much as I could, read about that time period, read about what it was like, diaries, whatever it may be. And it was usually as simple as, looking it up on the internet, but I went to the library once or twice at UT. It's just doing whatever you can to make the story feel authentic so people can immerse themselves in it. You're not going to be like, that doesn't seem right, because you don't want distraction. So I just did my best with it. Yeah, you're welcome.
Nice. Create your own world while still maintaining integrity and realistic standards to match the period. Thanks. That was an amazing question, Monique. Thank you so much. That is something, when thinking about creative writing, that's really important, is how do you, what do you have to do to make sure your audience feels like the space that you've created is real, and the craftsmanship that goes into doing that level of work. For Dr. Gaines, he used his quarter community to draw lots of inspiration to create the quarter communities in his novels, because actually each novel takes place on a different plantation. They're not all on the same plantation. And actually in all of his novels, there's only one character that ever repeats, and that's Sheriff Mapes. So in 9 books over 50 years, he only reused one character. But like there's something really important when telling these kind of stories, of grounding them in like a level of reality that people can connect with, and like also kind of think about what's happening, or even what they've experienced in similar spaces. I think that's really a really powerful device that a lot of creative writers use. Speaking of creative writing, when did you get started with creative writing? Like, what got you on that path?
I was always one of those students who was bad at most things, I like to say. I wasn't good at math, I wasn't good at science, but I just always liked books. I always liked stories, and I liked that feeling more than anything else of just getting lost in a good story. And I wanted to give that over to other people. So I've been writing fiction since elementary school, really. And I think in high school, I really started feeling like, maybe I'll be an English major, maybe I'll, take this seriously. So yeah, I would say like junior year of high school, really, really trying to sit down and write stuff. It was bad, but I was writing stuff, and when I got to the University of Oregon, I had the opportunity to work with one or two mentors that I still are, I'm still in touch with, and they helped me really work on my craft, and they would take my embarrassing writing and tell me ways to make it less embarrassing, and slowly but surely I got to where I am now. So it's been many years, and even to this day, I still feel like, I still feel worried about starting a story the same way I felt when I started The Sweetness of Water. I feel like I'm not ready for it. Every story I start, I feel like I'm not ready to write this, but you just have to do it, and that's what I continue to try to do, even though I feel like an imposter at times. It's you're never gonna stop feeling that way no matter what you do. You gotta just get it done. So yeah.
That's really important. I think that's something that applies to multiple fields. And sometimes you just gotta bear down and get it done, and
yeah
hope for the best at first, and then refine it little by little as you go along.
I'm sure you think people expect you to know every single thing about Mr. Gaines, but you can only know so much, and you gotta just be happy with that.
Yeah. I am still surprised by things I learned, especially working with people from the community, from Point Coupee, from Oscar, or talking with his family, learning new stories about him and what inspired him. So that's always one of the things about being a lifelong learner, is that you're literally always learning. So you're always open to finding new inspiration for your work. So you were in Texas, which is Southern. It's
Southern-ish, different sort of Southern, but yeah.
Did you explore any other Southern states while you were getting your MFA in Texas, like any of the surrounding states?
No, I did not. I was in Georgia for a minute. My friend graduated from school there, so I got to visit Atlanta, but it was very brief. I wasn't out taking notes for my book, that's for sure. No. I was mostly in Texas, and even Texas, that's the thing about the South, and even Texas. Austin isn't like the rest of Texas, and I would never even think that I'd know the real Texas at this point. But I don't know if you know the real anything. I'm being from Oregon, I don't know the real Eastern Oregon or the coast. So you'd have to put your best foot forward when you're writing this sort of thing, and just do your best with it. So that's a long answer to your question, but no, I did not go around the South too much.
You mentioned you read oral histories from formerly enslaved people. I'm assuming you were talking about the WPA interviews that were done during World War II.
I don't know. I did not. I should have kept my sources. I did not keep my. I was just browsing online, and this was years ago. It was the first thing I looked at, and it's something I talked about with Oprah. I looked at it, and I just immediately stopped looking at it because I was like, "Oh, this is good stuff. I want to think about this more, but I want it to be my imagination, if you will." So I sort of shut myself off from it, and I haven't gone back, but it's perhaps it's that, yeah.
Are you working on any new books right now? Are you just kind of riding the sweetness of water wave at the moment?
It's gonna be sweetness forever. No, no, I'm working on another novel. It's a similar time period. I quote Tobias Wolff. He talks about when you talk about new work, it hardens and it breaks. So I try to. I'm keeping it to myself right now. I see we got a question there, but it's about halfway through. So give me a few years, and hopefully I have some more work to share with people.
We have a question in the chat. Do you mind if I read it off?
Go for it, yeah.
Do you plan to continue, from Monique Bro, do you plan to continue writing for this time period based on the South, or will you branch into later periods to further expand your craft, such as the Great Migration, Jim Crow, Civil Rights, post-Vietnam, or even current day?
I'm gonna do every single one by one. No, I would like to. I'd like to do all of those. I have no idea in the future where I'm gonna go with my work. I mean, I didn't plan on writing about Reconstruction, really. The story just came to me. It's all just a matter of what characters come to me. I don't start with a time period, really. And I didn't plan on writing about Reconstruction again with the second novel, but there was just a few things I found out, and I felt like I had a story to tell that happened to be in that same time period. So after this, I have no idea. I might write a contemporary novel. You know, I always tell people at some point it gets very tiresome having to explain or describe somebody getting on a wagon whenever they go anywhere. I'd like just have somebody get in a car and go somewhere and save me some time. So I don't know. I don't know if I can do historical fiction forever, but we'll see. If another story comes to me, I'll write from whatever time period that is.
We have another question from Shelley Ingram. She says, one of the scenes that really sticks in my memory from early in the novel is when Prentice is kneading Landry's feet, this deep, deep brotherly care. Can you talk a little more about brotherhood and family in the novel?
Sure. That's a scene that I enjoy too. I don't know if I can say it as the author. I guess I like all of them, but that's a memorable one. I have three brothers, and I think brotherhood is just something that is something that's always on my mind in some way. Ironically, I'm not that close to my brothers, honestly. I'm certainly not as close as they were. These two brothers have been through so much. But it's not family, I would say, but it's just love. I think love is at the heart of a lot of the story, in the sense of humanity. And the brothers will do anything for each other in the same way, George will do anything for Isabel. And in a way which I think, is the engine of the novel, George would come to do for the brothers too, because he sort of views them as his, sons. And that's why the town is upset with him. I mean, on some level, it's because he's paying them a fair wage. But on the other hand, it's that he's just treating them well. He's treating them with that tender sense of love, and that can't happen. So whenever I'm constructing characters and how they relate to each other, I don't know. I just try to get to the heart of what connects them, what binds them, and for those characters specifically, that love was big. Yeah.
We have another question, and I also have a question, comment, possible reading suggestion for you based on what you just said.
All right. Wherever you want to start. Yeah.
Dr. Marcia Godet asked, why did you decide to make George Walker a person of Northern origin and family rather than from a Southern family?
I think a big part of these characters as well for me is the sense that they're outcasts, a lot of them, and I think that in a sense is what part of George connects with the brothers. And I was just trying to imagine what could make him the biggest outcast possible, really. And I think a big part of this novel is that he doesn't fit in, and he doesn't want to go along with the way that things are supposed to be in the South, and he doesn't care, he doesn't have to. And I think part of his naivete, if you will, is that he feels like the brothers don't have to either, because why would they? He doesn't have to. If they want to work on his land, why not? And of course, this will have, I don't want to give away spoilers, but huge consequences for the book. So yeah, on a level, his innocence equates to his privilege, and I think that was easier to bring to the surface and to bring to light if he was originally from the North.
So that's but I don't know if you know this, but like even the way you're playing with like northern whiteness versus southern whiteness in your novel does follow it along a line of tradition, especially from early turn of the century Black authors. But writing about this as it was happening. And I think that's something that's really fascinating. It's like, it's something about that level of otherness and understanding how people not from the South come to the South and choose to navigate or not navigate the customs and cultures of these spaces. So the book I was thinking about is The Colonel's Dream, The Colonel's Dream by Charles Chestnut.
Okay.
Charles Chestnut, yes. I get authors' names confused a little bit sometimes. Who was a turn of the century African American author. I think that's a novel you would really enjoy.
Sure.
His work is really awesome in general, especially for the fact that he's writing during Reconstruction. But like there is something that was happening a lot with, historically speaking, at the time period your fiction is set in, like with Black authors using their work to like try to convey humanity and counter a lot of the stereotypes that are coming out. Because by this point, minstrelly was pretty solidified as a part of American culture, and a defining measure of Blackness was minstrel shows, which were not even created by Black people. And so they turned to their craft, to creative writing, to try to change that narrative. And you're playing into a lot of the similar tropes that they were playing into in the 1880s as authors, as African American authors. And I think there's something really kind of special about that. Special or complicated, I'm not really sure. Because we're still talking about the same things, right?
Interesting. Interesting nonetheless. Again, these themes echo from the past to now. I mean, they're just as essential and just as important as they were back then. So, these are the sort of connections I love to see getting made.
You guys feel free to drop questions in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask any questions you have. We're excited. This is I think this is a great conversation that's happening and very involved. Do you have any advice for creative writers, or people who want to be creative writers, or people who are in grad school for creative writing?
Sure. Yeah, I one thing that you were sort of talking about, always learning, always trying to learn more in your position. I think that's important for writers too. I think a sense of curiosity and a sense of always wanting to educate yourself and learn. I mean, I would have come upon this material had I not just been sort of honestly just browsing the internet, and reading those oral histories that have been put down. That's how I came upon it. And so much of what fascinates me and makes me want to write is just these little tidbits I find, just on the internet, in books, wherever it may be. So just staying curious. My former creative writing professor always would make us add one fact we learned into all of our stories. And I just think that on a greater level represents this idea of just always be on the hunt for new things that you want to know about that might inform your fiction. Beyond that, just I think patience, and being kind to yourself. You know, the world's a tough place to live in, especially now. And we all have enough, trouble just getting out of bed and doing whatever we need to do. So when it comes to your creative work, just be easy on yourself. It's going to take time. And even if you can only write a sentence or a paragraph, whatever it is for a day, just do what you can, and eventually it'll get there. Eventually you'll have a novel too, or a short story, whatever you're working on. It does get done, but you just have to be patient.
Another question in the chat from Dr. Gode. Are there any plans for a movie or mini series? And if so, who would you like to see play Prentice and Landry and George?
Oh. It's no, I mean the novel hasn't been optioned by Steven Spielberg or anything like that. No, I've talked to a few producers and a few directors, and there's people who are interested, but I don't know. I think that's another tip I would give young authors: don't get caught up in the adaptions, because it just takes years, and people getting attached to it and they don't want to do it. Just focus on the work. That's what I try to do. So it might happen. There's certainly some interest, but nothing concrete. There's no date to start filming. That's for sure. In terms of actors, none come to mind, but I assure you people have come up to me and told me this person would be good for this role. I think someone said like Jeff Bridges for George, but he's a little old, honestly. I think he might be a little too old, but I can see how George kind of has that feel to him. Brendan and Landry, to me, I don't know, you almost need new actors. I feel like they're so unique to me. I'm sure if I saw somebody on screen playing them who was famous, I'd be like, oh yeah, they're doing it perfectly. But to me, they just so much exist as who they are in my mind and how I wrote them that it's hard for me to put a famous actor in their place.
Yeah, book to movie or book to television adaptations is always something that's really interesting. Something that as a millennial is kind of like has been a weirdly major part of my life, thinking like obviously the most obvious one from my childhood is Harry Potter, as someone who grew up on the books and who had adamantly refused to watch the movies because they are not the books. But that's something like Kindred is just become a series, right? And we had The Hate You Give. Like this is like seeming like the next most logical step for highly appreciated novels is it's going to become a made-for-TV movie, it's going to become a movie, or it's going to become a mini series or something of that nature. And it's very interesting to kind of watch how these things, how this conversation essentially is translated from the space it is given to the readers in their minds to come up with what that landscape actually looks like for them, and what the people look like, how you personifying these characters to someone being picked to be that character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't use film as an idea. It elevates the novel, really. The novel's the novel. I mean, to me, the novel's on the shelf now. Whoever directs it or produces it, it's in a way that's their work. It's a reflection of the work, and it echoes what takes place in the work. But it's also, you have to let it go at some point, and it becomes their take on it. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, but whatever keeps the conversation going and whatever brings new readers to the work, I mean, that's what matters to me. I want people to engage with this story, because it means so much to me, and I hope it means more to all the people who can read it in the years to come. All right. Anything else?
There are so far no other questions in the chat. Do you have any questions or
no. I mean, I'm happy I was able to contribute. I just want to do my part to again, talk with the readers, and it was a pleasure to talk with you, and hopefully people can take something from this.
Well, I just want to open the floor again if anyone else has any questions, comments, observations, fun facts you would really like for me to know. Now is the time. Please feel free to share. I am so glad you all were able to attend. And definitely thank you, Nathan, for taking time to talk with us tonight.
Absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We Darian Drew said, I'm very happy to be here and I'm thankful to be learning, understanding, expressing gratitude for the changes and the impacts that have taken place for Black culture to rise and emerge based on the precedents of our past. It is encouraging to be involved in such a great journey of self-discovery, innovation, and cultural awareness. Thank you, Mr. Nathan.
Thank you. That was beautiful. You said it better than I could. I'm the writer. So yeah, thank you so much.
Well, I'm so glad you guys came today. I do want to take a few moments just to remind everybody that we do have another event coming up, another virtual talk on February 16th. It is called Knowledge Makes a Man Unfit to Be a Slave, a conversation with Aisha Heichel about the Avery Normal Institute and the power of Black education, April 16th. You can use the same bit.ly link you used to register for this event to register for that event. If you didn't, I'd be excited to see you all. We are also doing an event in person on February 19th called A Dream Deferred, Not Denied, Desegregating Higher Education at Blackham Coliseum at 3 o'clock. It is a forum about the desegregation of higher education and a history about UL being the first Louisiana public school to desegregate. So if you have time and you have interest, please feel free to come. Please feel free to email me. My name is Shaylin Woods. I am the head and archivist of the Ernest J Gaines Center. I love emails, questions, comments, suggestions for future programs. Please feel free to reach out. And again, thank you guys so much, so much for taking time out of your night to spend with us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Shaylin, so much.
Thank you so much, guys. Have a great evening.
Okay.